Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to the Ryan Tran podcast, of course. Hope you're doing well. I'm really excited to be here to be recording this right now. It's one that I've been wanting to do for a while. Not like idea wise, but just like I've been trying to sit down and record. I originally tried for last Thursday, so today is Tuesday. Today is Tuesday the 14th, Pi Day, also Steph Curry's birthday. But yeah, I tried to do this last Thursday, didn't have time, tried to do it over the weekend, got a whole bunch of stuff came up. But here we are, finally get a chance to sit down and record. I got a lot to speak on, good and interesting, and I look forward to it as always. If you're tuning in, if you have tuned in, I appreciate you. I thank you for your time and your ears. I hope it's time well spent, let's say. And so let's jump right in, eh? So I thought for this one I would start off by sharing a little bit about what's been happening in my life recently. And the idea pretty much is this concept that I've been thinking about for me personally. I've been hearing it too. Also, before I get into it, I should just say I'm sitting in my garage right now. Just for context, I'm sitting in my garage. The garage is open and cars drive by, so you'll hear some noise here and there. Again, I mentioned it before, but there's also a train that runs right behind my house, so you may hear that from time to time, but so be it. This is my podcast. And I hope it's not too much of a nuisance. It's not high quality studio production, but you get the gist of it. I wanted to share a little bit about what's been happening in my life recently. It's been wild, to say the least, but again, the idea is trying to get the most out of life, and it's something that I've heard from people that I listen to pretty regularly. It's something that I've adopted and kind of integrated into my own life for many, many reasons, some of which I'll get into. But yeah, what's been happening recently? So last week was the end of our trimester. So if you're not familiar, I've mentioned it before, but who knows? Maybe this is your first time listening. I am a sixth grade teacher, and we just finished our trimester this past week, and so we did a whole bunch of parent-teacher conferences. I did a whole bunch of myself and all the other teachers, we did a whole bunch of parent-teacher conferences, which was, it was good for the most part. It was really nice. I got to meet a couple new parents that I didn't meet last time, like the mom came in versus the dad, or parents that weren't able to come the first time in person were able to come in person this time. So new interactions, some familiar faces, which was cool. Overall, really good to sit down with the parents and sometimes the student themselves to check in on how they're doing. Just see where the parents are, what they want for their kids. To share good news, right? Like things that they've improved on. So that's it's always really nice. It's mentally, it's quite exhausting because it takes a lot out of me for social interactions in general. But then in those situations, I feel like it's not that the stakes are high, but it's a serious conversation. The parents want to know, how their kids are doing, what they're learning, what they need support on. And I'm trying to be there fully engaged, fully aware and attent. So it does take a lot out of me mentally. But I mentioned it last time I talked about parent-teacher conferences, but it does fill the bucket, let's say. And one more thing I'll just quickly mention since we're here. I do have a beer in my hand. It's been quite the day. Even today, the past 2 weeks have been a whirlwind in good ways. Some ways inconvenient, but it's been a whirlwind. So I do have a beer in my hand. Today in particular has been a day, so I may pause from time to time just to have a quick sip, like right now. And the silence is nice because you get to listen to the birds. But yeah, so parent-teacher conferences, got the job done there. Oh, man, and then what happened after that? At the end of the week on Friday, I do trainings for my basketball group. We had a really good group on Friday, a lot of new faces, a lot of familiar faces, and just a really quality session. I think at this point, everybody that has been to one of my sessions, they know how I operate, how I move, how I like to transition from one drill to the next, what the drills are, what I expect out of them. And so it makes the process really efficient. And we only have an hour because I have to book a gym at this facility called Courtside Sports Bantica. Shout out to Courtside, the good people over there, good facility. They probably won't hear this, but so be it, you know. It's only an hour. Just for, it's only an hour, so we got to be really efficient, really on it. And it was a great session, had a great time. It's always good to see the kids that I work with. I appreciate them so much for, just training with me. 2 years into the process and all this, and it's cool to see the group growing, and again, familiar faces, new faces, friends telling friends, people coming to try it out. People are coming up to me, introducing themselves like, hey, what's up? What is this? I see you do this every week. Seems really cool, really interesting. Like parents, a coach introduced himself to me this past week, so that was really nice. Some inconvenient news. After this session, I was on the way to drop off one of my little brother's friends and unfortunately was rear-ended pretty hard. Thankfully, no major injuries. Everybody's okay. But again, that was just one thing that was inconvenient. So over the past couple of days, just trying to figure that out, get everything sorted and squared away. A lot of phone calls, a lot of information, this and that. If you've ever been in an accident, you probably know. And just inconvenient, but again, grateful to be alive, grateful for nothing too serious to have happened. And if you're listening, I guess this is a good opportunity for me to share and say, just in my recent life, I've tried to really take driving seriously, like really pay attention, really focus, be aware of my surroundings, pay attention to what the other cars are doing, try to anticipate things if possible. Just take driving seriously, because it is a very serious matter, and I don't know how, serious the general population takes it most of the time. I've seen a lot of wild stuff on the road, like people doing makeup, people blatantly staring at their phones, all kinds of stuff. I'm sure you have too. So I guess this is just a PSA to drive safe, take it seriously, focus, limit your distractions, be aware of your surroundings, right? Not only do you have to pay attention to yourself, but you got to watch other cars, like, are they swerving? What are they doing? And just try to anticipate, right? Situational awareness, essentially. Drive safe. And why not? I had this idea. It's not my idea. I've probably heard this from somewhere else, but essentially the idea is, I think we should probably have people renew their licenses like once every year or once every 2 years, something like that. Like go in, do a test, make sure you know everything you need to know, make sure you're a quality driver, just to hold people accountable, keep them on their toes, because I don't think we don't have to. Like your driver's license expires, but you just go to the DMV, they give you a new one. I think we should really consider making people, reevaluate them somewhat regularly, right? Again, maybe once a year is too much, maybe once every 2 years. But who knows, man? You got to get a small check every year, so once a year can't be that inconvenient. I don't know. Anyways, that happened Friday. Saturday was a big day. Saturday was so long story short, I've been coaching a basketball team this past 2 months, 3 months actually. Fifth and sixth grade as part of my school, the school that I work at, and our season the week before had come to an end, at least for the city league. And so me and the other coaches at my school and the other schools, we wanted to put together a tournament to kind of just wrap up the season, end it with a bang pretty much. So we had spent a lot of the time leading up to this past Saturday planning and reaching out to teams, coordinating, all kinds of stuff. So a lot of work went into it. It was a beautiful day. Great basketball games, big attendance, no drama, because sometimes these situations can get spicy. But it was a great day, great turnout. Everybody had a good time, quality basketball being played, and it was just good to just see our kids just play, just hoop. I think at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about for most of us, from the coaches to the parents. It's just like, hey, let the kids have a good time playing basketball, be with each other, compete. And we did just that. It was a good day. I will speak for my group and how the game went, just for the basketball heads out there and for anybody else that's interested. So our group, we've been doing a city league, and we did quite well, right? Like a decent amount of my kids are new to basketball, but then there's also a fair amount that are experienced and have played before, not like at a very high level, but enough to where they're good, they're solid. And we had a good season. We lost our first two games, and then after that, I think we went on like an 9-10 game run. I don't know if it's 9 or 10 exactly, but I know it's somewhere up there. And it was a really, really good experience coaching this group. Obviously, typical headaches of them, like sometimes going into games lazy or going into practices lazy, but overall, really good experience. And our first game, we played a pretty good team. It's funny because a lot of the kids on the other team, I actually know them, and I've played with them before just for fun, and they know me, they know our group. So it was personal, but not like that. Like, it was just fun because we all know each other, kinda, and it was a very intense game. The score ended up being something like 21-28, something like that. I think we lost by 7, or I can't remember exactly. But it was intense. It was like a typical, what you could describe it as like a typical AAU game. Again, this is mostly for my basketball heads, but for others too. It's like the game is very physical, very fast paced. You're getting full court press pretty much the entire time, so there's no let up on that. And it's quite physical, so you're not going to get that many calls. You just got to step up, really. And it was good for a lot of reasons. So long story short, my team did not win, but I was very proud of how they played. And so many things to say on this, and might as well. Here we are. It's a podcast, guys. Where can I start? We were down. They scored like 8 points in the first 2 minutes, which was kind of wild. Like they were hitting. And I called the timeout to kind of settle my group down and let them know, like, hey, I told them at the beginning too, because I knew it was going to be intense. I told them at the beginning, like, hey guys, listen, this is not going to be an easy game, but I know you can do it. You have the ability to. I believe in you guys. And they actually did. Like, I wasn't saying that just to say it, because sometimes, coaches can just say those things. I knew they could do it, but I told them, it was like, look, you're going to have to limit your mistakes. Everybody's going to have to play together. You're going to have to play great defense. You're going to have to take care of the ball, all the things, right? Everything. And, we were down, like, probably 8 or 10 points by the end of the time. The first half was done. And we came out in the second half like solid, right? Like we got stops, we were able to score the basketball, and eventually we took a lead with about 3-4 minutes left in the game. We took a like 2 or 3 point lead. Now, unfortunately, on the other team, they had this kid that was apparently is really good, and from what I saw that day, is actually quite good. I don't know how, like, in terms of ranking and all that, but this kid was solid. Like, he was very composed, under control, was not rushed or flustered at all by any amount of pressure. And you can tell, right? Like, I know basketball quite well, and you can tell the difference between somebody that is flustered and scared and not sure what to do, not decisive, let's say, versus somebody that's, okay, I know where to go, I know how to do this, I know what pass to make. And they had one of those kids, and he hit like 2 or 3 shots that put him back in the lead, and the kind of sealed the game for us. But we had opportunities, man. We had, with about 2 minutes left, we got a couple steals, just couldn't convert it into buckets. And it was emotional. That's another thing that I felt like the kids on my team, some of them started crying, some of them got frustrated because it was just intense and they weren't, playing like they were used to. And so I kind of felt that too. Like, I felt the emotion. I felt myself, feeling for them. I'm pretty empathetic. I felt like almost crying. It didn't happen, but I definitely felt, I felt it. I felt it in my body, and, my eyes started to get a little bit watery. But nonetheless, it was a really good experience. I think for me, for the kids, like, just to feel that kind of game, that intensity, right? Because it's different than like the City League. The City League can be kind of chill. It's not super competitive, right? And so playing in a game of high intensity, high level competition is good, especially for the kids that want to continue to take basketball seriously and keep going. I think is really good for them. Now, we didn't win, but again, for me personally, I walked away from that experience with a whole bunch of new thoughts on coaching, right? Like, there were some moments, some situations where I felt like I could have better prepared my kids. Like, again, this is for the basketball heads. Like, I could have talked about breaking the press more. That's probably a common thing at the young level. And then I could have talked about, like, who takes the ball out, like sideline, baseline situations when the ball goes out of bounds. Like, who takes it out? What kind of plays are we running? What are we looking at? And then maybe just, like, some plays to go get a bucket, right? Instead of just letting them play free. Like, okay, let's run a set to try to get these looks. I probably could have did a little bit more of that in preparation. But again, leading up to this tournament, it was a lot. It was a lot of planning. Part of the planning, of course, because we hosted it, and parent-teacher. Excuse me. Parent-teacher conferences. So it was a lot, but I could have done a better job of preparing my kids. So learning experience for me as a coach, as a young coach. It is my 3rd season that I just finished. And I think we're going to pick back up. I really like the group. I don't know how I'm going to do it just yet, but I think we're going to pick it back up. And so, yeah. And then, I guess what else can I say of recent is, like, I've been playing a lot of basketball with my friends, which is cool. It's always a good time, good bonding, good way to get the mind off of everything else. And just kind of chill and have a good time. Like, I love playing basketball, so I'm grateful for that. And why did I mention all of this? Again, the idea is I'm trying to get the most out of life right now, and I've been explaining it like this, and I think it'll make sense. Essentially, part of what I'm trying to do in life is to take on as much as possible, as much as I can handle, let's say. One, to see what are my capabilities, how far can I stretch myself, but then 2, also is this idea of, like, do everything you can, like, make the most out of life. It's cliche, you've probably heard it before in some way, shape, or form like that, but leave no stone unturned. No regrets, essentially. Get the most out of this thing, because you never really know what could happen. Whether it be natural disaster or unfortunate accident, your time is up, and that's that. So for me, it is actually quite important to get the most out of life. One, for the personal development, but two, just because, you never really know. And so I try to make the most out of every situation. And it's been great, honestly. I feel great doing it. Now, here's how I've explained it. It's like, on the one hand, I feel great. Like, I'm doing so much. I'm interacting with so many people, and I love it. On the other hand, it's like slightly overwhelming, because I'm constantly moving from one thing to the next, so much so that I don't really even have time to process like what just happened. And there's so many more things that I could have shared, like particular situations in my classroom with like certain students, or situations with basketball stuff, or situations at home. But at the moment, at this time in my life, the mindset, what I'm looking for, it's like, all right, it's all good. This is all voluntary. Like, I'm willing to accept this. I'm taking it on out of my own choice. And it is overwhelming, I admit that. But on the other hand, I truly do feel like I'm getting the most out of life. Like, I'm leaving everything on the court, as we say in the sports world. Leave it all out there. Because, I've mentioned this before, but you really never know when your time is here, when your time is coming. So, I'll leave it at that. Get the most out of life, pretty much. And I've been doing just that. It's felt great. I'm happy. I'm proud of myself. And so, hopefully, I have the energy to keep it going, pretty much. I'll stop there. The next thing that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time, that's kind of been on my mind recently, just for a variety of reasons. Essentially, I wanted to talk about this book called Notes from Underground. It's written by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I've talked about him a little bit. This book is actually, it's an interesting one. So pretty much, how can I summarize it? Notes from Underground is a story of this man, this character, who is pretty much like an overthinker, right? He's very, he's in his thoughts a lot, and very critical of himself and the world, and has explored so many different thought processes. But then also at the same time, he's like very, very well read and very knowledgeable. So he knows a lot, but then he's also he exhibits the emotions of a disgruntled, frustrated, teeth-grinding person who's mad at the world, shaking their fist at the world, for a variety of reasons. And how it's written, it's kind of like a diary. So it's a little bit, it's not so organized, right? It's like the actual, you hear the actual thoughts of this man. I forget if it's written in first person or third person, so forgive me. But again, Notes from Underground, written by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Why am I bringing this up? Well, again, it's the story of a man who is an overthinker, pretty much. Is too much in his thoughts to where it's a fault. It's a hindrance on his life. But then it's also the reason he knows what he knows, for a lack of a better way to phrase that. Because he's an overthinker, he's thought about most things, and he realizes the realities of human interaction and social situations and society and all this kind of stuff. But it's to his detriment, because he's so much in his thoughts that it can become difficult to interact with. I believe in the book it's described as the normal person, an ordinary man, I believe, let's say. And why is that relevant to me? Well, there are some times in my life where I feel like I can be that person, where I will admit, I acknowledge that I am definitely probably an overthinker, and uh, I try to do it for the right reasons, right? Like, I'm very thoughtful about my decisions. I'm very thoughtful about what I say, who I interact with, how I do things, how I conduct myself. But then also at the same time, like, I'm sure others can relate to some extent. It can slow you down. You can get caught up in your thoughts and your own thinking, so much so that it hurts you or it slows you down, or you think too much, right? Or you get bogged down in like the negative stuff. And so there's like a fine line to balance there, pretty much. And why have I been feeling that? I noticed it because, well, again, I'm a teacher, and there's so many different thoughts that I have going on in my head throughout the day that it has become a little bit difficult to interact with my colleagues, just because, well, one, I already lean towards towards being an introvert these days. But then two, just with everything that's been going on in the world, like, I'm constantly thinking about a whole bunch of other things that they're not really topics that you would just bring up in passing, or like, hey, if you're in the break room or something with somebody and you're like, yeah, I just want to talk about, what's the weather like, or this sporting event that happened yesterday, or this event that happened. It's a lot, like, at least for me, I'm thinking about, like, what is the relationship between male and females these days, right? Why is it so adversarial? What just happened with the Silicon Valley Bank situation, and how does that impact people's money? How does that impact the state of the economy? How does that impact how does that impact money? How does that impact people? What should we be doing in these situations? All kinds of things. And I don't do it because out of like, I'm trying to be smarter than everybody, I'm trying to fix the world. It's just like what my mind gravitates to. And I also acknowledge that these aren't the easiest topics to discuss with other people, right? Again, just in passing, like, yeah, maybe if the other person is thinking about the same thing, similar topics, then it might be easy. But even then, like, in passing, it's kind of tough, right? Because you want to just sit down and really lay out your thoughts. Lay out your thoughts, essentially, right? Elaborate, speak at length, pretty much. Notes from Underground. It's a quite interesting book, and I pulled up some quotes I think will be interesting to read. Let me see here if I can find the one that would be a good place to start from. Yeah, sure. Why not this? So here is let's read it. Let's go for it. Okay, so here's the first one. And all out of boredom, gentlemen, all out of boredom, I am crushed with tedium. After all, the direct, immediate, legitimate fruit of heightened consciousness is inertia. That is, the deliberate refusal to do anything. All spontaneous people, men of action, are active because they are stupid and limited. Now, how is this to be explained? Like this. In consequence of their limitations, they take immediate but secondary causes for primary ones, and thus they are more quickly and easily convinced than other people that they have found indisputable grounds for their action, and they are easy in their minds, and this, is the main thing. After all, in order to act, one must be absolutely sure of oneself. No doubts must remain anywhere. But how am I, for example, to be sure of myself? What are the primary causes on which I can take my stand? Where are my foundations? Where am I to take them from? I practice thinking, and consequently, Each of my primary causes pulls along another, even more primary, in its wake, and so on ad infinitum. Hopefully I got that right. That is really the essence of all thinking and self-awareness. Perhaps this, once again, is a law of nature. Now, what do I get from that one? It's pretty much this idea. So in the book, the context of this quote is like something like, most people, right, the ordinary people, the normal people, not the underground man, are able to make decisions quite easily because they're not thinking about second, third order effects. They're like, oh, I'm gonna, I don't know, I'm gonna post this on social media and people will like it, people will respond to it, without even thinking, a step further, pretty much. I know it was a bad example, but essentially thinking about what are the other, like, what happens after you do something like that, right? Like, maybe I'm gonna bring, I don't know, I'll try another bad example. Bear with me. I'll bring cupcakes and pizza for my students to celebrate just cause. But then the second or third order effects might be something like, maybe not everybody is happy with pizza and cupcakes, or maybe not everybody, or maybe you bring pizza and cupcakes and they take advantage of it, right? They ask you again next week, hey, can we do that again? And for most people, it's easy to make decisions. For the underground man, he's expressed here that every time he thinks about what is the fundamental reason I'm making this decision, he comes across another one even more fundamental, and he has to examine that. And essentially, again, you could say, like, to a certain point that is productive and good because you're very thoughtful about your choices, but then at a certain point, right, you have to be able to act. And that's kind of where the overthinking aspect comes into all of this. I feel that a lot. Like, I'm constantly weighing out decisions in my head. Like, it could be something so mundane as here's actually quite a relevant example. Like, so I have two siblings that I live with. And I'm constantly asking myself, like, should I do this with my siblings? Should I get food for them, or should I not get food for them? Should I let them, be on their own, have some independence? Should I take them out here? If I don't take them out, they're going to think, like, I don't really care about them. But if I do take them out, then maybe I'm being, like, too nurturing, too easy. And I can just go on and on and on and on. And it's not like it's a bad thing, but it's maybe not so productive to be so caught up in this overthinking, let's say. Or if you're thinking about texting somebody or saying something to somebody that you're not sure how they might receive it, right? You're like, if I text them, they're going to say this, or if I say this to them, they're going to say this. And how I guess is a good place to say, like, how have I combated that recently? One, I've tried to take action. Like, I think I'm working on overcoming. I don't think it'll ever end for me, because this just seems like it's just the way my mind operates. Excuse me. But I'm working on it by simply just taking action, right? And saying, stop the thinking, do it, see what happens, right? See what reality tells you, instead of being so caught up in your head. And it's actually worked quite well. I've become a lot more brave, a lot more courageous. I'm not saying I'm the most by any means, but I have developed that muscle. I do genuinely feel like that, just by saying, you know what, fuck it, go for it, say what you got to say, do what you got to do, and see what happens. And I've accomplished this by pretty much taking not only because, but one thing that I've been doing recently that I want to share, that has actually been quite helpful, I want to say, for a whole bunch of other reasons, but on this particular, is I've been doing cold showers. Not the entire shower, but essentially I'll turn the water to the coldest, and I'll stand there for about a minute to a minute and a half, just kind of sitting, wiggling around, twisting, turning, just embracing that full cold. And it definitely is pretty miserable for the most part, right? Especially the initial shock and turning around, and when that water hits my back, it's like, ooh, good Lord. But that hesitancy that I feel right before getting into the water is the same hesitancy that I feel before I'm going to say something to somebody or do something that I feel, hesitant or overthinking. It's just like the ability to overcome that hesitancy and say, you know what, I'm getting in this water. Boom, do it. And I've done it essentially for the past 3 months. I've been pretty regular. I'm not every day, but I'm about every other day, which is pretty good for me. And it still sucks for the most part. I've gotten used to it a little bit. Some days I look forward to it because the feeling after is like, it actually is feel great to put yourself through that and come out on the other side like, man, I did that. Like I actually do feel proud of myself. And then there's also like the physiological benefits from increased baseline level of dopamine, better alertness, better focus, more productivity, more energy. So there's that too. There's a lot of decent amount of benefits, and you can even go as far as like benefits to the immune system, like on some Wim Hof shit. The next level for me is like to get into the ice baths, but I don't have access to the ice baths at the moment. So one of these days. But yeah, I wanted to share one of those quotes, that quote from Notes from Underground. There's one more. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, I think I found it. Thank you for your patience. Okay, this is cool. This one is interesting because it pretty much. So I'll start with the concept first. The concept is pretty much not everybody. So it's the underground man speaking. He's pretty much critiquing society, this push in society for rationality, saying like at his time, at the time of the writing, there's this move to be more rational. That if we were just more rational, that people did things that were rational for them, that they would achieve a better life, let's say, to put it simply, right? But what the underground man proposes is there are times and situations where a person will act in direct contrast to whatever it is that may benefit them, right? If it's like, yes, if I quit drinking alcohol and I stop lying to people, my life will turn around. But he kind of proposes the idea, which I actually do believe is kind of true to some extent, like sometimes even if a person knows what is best for them, for whatever reason, they're going to choose to act in the complete opposite way. And there's nothing you can do about that. Like, that is like true freedom to be human being, essentially. And I think that's what the underground man proposes here, and what Dostoevsky is proposing. So I'll try to read a little bit of it. A part of this quote's a long one, so I'll try to get the main part of it. So let's see here. Okay. Where should I start? Because it is kind of long. Okay. All right, fuck it. We'll read it from the beginning. Then, This is all of you speaking. A new political economy will come into all complete. Okay. This is all of you speaking. A new political economy will come into existence, all complete and also calculated with mathematical accuracy, so that all problems will vanish in the twinkling of an eye, simply because all possible answers to them will have been supplied. Then the palace of crystal will arise. Then, well in short, the golden age will come. Of course, it is quite impossible, here I am speaking for myself, to guarantee that it won't be terribly boring then. Because what can one do if everything has been plotted out and tabulated? But on the other hand, everything will be eminently sensible. Of course, boredom leads to every possible kind of ingenuity. After all, it is out of boredom that golden pins get stuck into people. But all this would not matter. What is bad, again, this is me speaking, not me, it's the underground man, is that for all I know, people may then find pleasure even in golden pins. Man, after all, is stupid, phenomenally stupid. That is to say, although he is not in the least stupid, he is so ungrateful that it is useless to expect anything else from him. Really, I shall not be in the least surprised if, for example, in the midst of the future universal good sense, some gentleman with an ignoble, or rather derisive or reactionary air, springs up suddenly out of nowhere, puts his arms akimbo and says to all of us, "Come on, gentlemen, why shouldn't we get rid of all this calm reasonableness with one kick, just so as to send all these logarithms to the devil and be able to live our own lives at our own sweet will?" I think that's really key there. To live our own lives at our own sweet will. That wouldn't matter either. But what is really mortifying is that he would certainly find followers. That's the way men are made. And all this for the most frivolous of reasons, hardly worth mentioning, one would think, namely, that a man, whoever he is, always and everywhere likes to act as he chooses, and not at all according to the dictates of reason and self-interest. So there you go. It's that part about, like, even though it's the best, might be the best choice for you, sometimes people like to make their own choices and choose things that are maybe harmful or not the best choice for them. It is indeed impossible and sometimes positively imperative, in my view, to act directly contrary to one's own best interests, one's own free and unfettered volition, one's own caprice, I don't know how to say that word, however wild, one's own fancy, inflamed sometimes to the point of madness. That is the one best and greatest good, which is never taken into consideration because it will not fit into any classification, and the omission of which always sends all systems and theories to the devil. Where did all the sages get the idea that a man's desire must be normal and virtuous? Why did they imagine that he must inevitably will what is reasonable and profitable? What a man needs is simply and solely independent volition, whatever that independence may cost and wherever it may lead, well, but the devil only knows what volition. Really interesting, really interesting to me, again, because we often, and I'm guilty of this too, we often try to lean towards what is good, say this is what it means to live a good life, these are the values and the principles, and I think that's probably what humans have been trying to figure out as long as we've existed, as long as we've been cognitive and conscious. What does it mean to live a good life? What is my own best interest? And here the underground man is proposing, like, well, sometimes people just want to act on their own accord. They want to be able to make their own decisions. And why is it that even though the experts and the smart people and everybody that studies human nature and psychology and philosophy say, well, here are the principles and the values and the ethics and the morality that will guide us to a good life and peace and harmony and utopia, why are they right? And why do they think that everybody should be normal and virtuous? Why does everybody have to do what is reasonable and rational for them? All a person needs is to be able to make their own choices, and sometimes that might not be the best choice. And I think that's an important reminder, especially in today's world, because we have a lot of people rightfully so. I don't blame them. And again, I am guilty of this too to some extent. But I try to, open my mind a little bit. We have a lot of people, a lot of voices, a lot of ideas in our current time that are trying to solve problems in our society. And I get that. I understand that we have a lot of problems that we need to solve. But then also at the same time, like, who are you to tell somebody else how to live their life? I think that's really the fundamental question. Like, if I want to drink, so be it. If I want to, I don't know. It's kind of hard to find examples, or at least give good examples, because you can easily counter them, right? If I want to harm myself, so be it. If I want to lie and cheat and steal, so be it. Obviously, I'm not fully in support of all that. Like, these are just examples, right? But I guess I'm in support of the ability for a person to make their own choices at the end of the day. Now, we obviously need consequences, and we need to, manage that to some extent. But fundamentally, to say that, oh, you're making the wrong choice because you're not doing what is rational, what is best for you, I think that's it's not our place either to tell somebody else that. In the same way that it's not their place to go out and harm people or do reckless things, I think there has to be a decent amount of respect to somebody making that kind of choice. And so, just something to think about, those two things. Again, what is the underground man? Notes from Underground is the story of a guy who's too conscious, is an overthinker, who's read widely. And there's one more. You know what? Let me see if I can find. Yeah, there's one more that's kind of similar, I think. So I'll just read it and we'll kind of wrap it up on there. So this one is kind of like there's a law of humanity. It's similar to what I had just read. So he says, "Gentlemen, I am tormented by questions. Answer them for me. You, for instance, want to cure men of their old habits and reform their will in accordance with science and good sense." So again, rationality there, right? But how do you know not only that it is possible, but also that it is desirable to reform man in that way? And what leads you to the conclusion that man's inclinations need reforming? In short, how do you know that such a reformation will be a benefit to man? And to go to the root of the matter, why are you so positively convinced that not to act against his real normal interests, guaranteed by the conclusions of reason and arithmetic, is certainly always advantageous for man and must always be a law for mankind? So far, you know that is only your supposition. It may be the law of logic, but not the law of humanity. And so there it is again, just this idea that, okay, you promote science and rationality and good sense and do what is best for you, but who are you to say that that is the desirable way to reform a human being? You might be right. I'm not saying that's wrong, but there's also an element of hubris in that, I think, that especially in today's world, it's like, oh, we know what is best, so you should listen to us. I'm not saying that's not true. Like, you might have the right idea, but also you can't force feed anybody, I think. At least that's something I'm starting to realize is like, yes, you might have good information, you might have good ideas, but you can't force feed that on people. You got to let them come to their own conclusions. And again, there's a possibility that you might be wrong. There's a possibility that your ideas of what a good life, what is science, what is rationality, that you might be wrong. And who knows if whatever it is that you're proposing is actually going to achieve the desired outcomes that you want. And so, yeah, all that to say, I've been thinking about Notes from the Underground quite a bit recently, just because, again, I would describe myself as, at times, not all the time, but at times an overthinker. I'm working on it, I'm managing it, but I think reading something like this will really make you consider, really make you think, because there are people out there like this, like myself. And this character really does resonate with me because I do feel like that to some extent. Like, who are you to say that your ideas are the best? Yeah, no matter how good they may sound, no matter how, like, because ideas do sound good, like, oh, be a good person, do this, do that, do this, do that, and you'll be all right. You'll live a good life. You'll be well respected. You'll have good friends. You'll achieve accolades. You'll achieve this. But who's to say that is the most desirable? Who's to say that if everybody does that, everybody will be on the same page? I don't know. And so I think we should leave space for people that think dramatically different from us, essentially, and be open to that. Be open to sitting with those ideas, let's say. Yeah. So I've been thinking about Notes from Underground a lot recently. I think it's a really interesting read. It's only about 100 pages, so it's not that long. Again, I mentioned it's a little bit sporadic because the way I've heard it described, it's kind of like a rant. So maybe, I think it's first person, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But regardless, check it out. It feels like a rant. Let's say it like that. It feels like a rant, so it's not very structured, not very organized. But if you can actually keep track of the ideas, it essentially explains, like, those quotes are some of the good ideas that I've gotten from the book, among others. So, something to check out, something to think about. And, you know what? I'll end it here. I'll end it on a quote that I shared on my Instagram. When did I share this on my Instagram? About a week ago. Shout out. Who is that? Bobby Shmurda? I forget the name of the song. It's been a while. About a week ago. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good song though. So I share this on my quote. I'll share this on my quote. Good Lord. I share this on my Instagram, and the train's coming, so I'm gonna wrap this up quick. When there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. And apparently, this is an African proverb. Something I've been thinking about a lot. We try to. I've been through this journey myself. It's so crazy that you realize these things. But essentially, as a young person, there's a quote about this too. Essentially, as a young person, you try to fix the world. But as you get older and you mature, you realize that it's a bigger battle to fix you and figure out you and fight your own battles within. Because there's that voice that's critical. There's that voice that is anxious. There's that voice that tells you, no, you shouldn't do something. And it's constantly with us because it is our own consciousness. So it's something we must always contend with and confront. And I think if most humans were to start with that, then it's like fix yourself before you fix the world, essentially, right? Figure out who you are, what are your problems, what are you dealing with, and then once you've got a good understanding, a good foundation, then you can move on to, okay, how can I work on the world, pretty much. So yeah, I'll read it one more time. When there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. And I'll wrap it up right there. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be alive. Like I mentioned, I really am trying to get the most out of life, trying to suck all the juice out of it. So if you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate your time. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you next time.